I experienced something incredible that lasted just 7 minutes. During my near-death experience, I saw things that changed me forever. Jesus himself guided me through a realm beyond our own, showing me truths about prayer I never imagined. What I witnessed was both amazing and scary. It completely transformed how I understand talking to God. But I can't tell you everything right now. The full story of what I saw and how it will change your view of prayer is something you need to hear from start to finish. Come with me as I share my journey. It reshaped my faith and opened my eyes to how our prayers really affect the world around us. You won't believe what I discovered in those 7 minutes between life and death. The frosty January morning greeted me with a deceptive calm as I slid into my car, ready for another day at work. The familiar routine of my commute lulled me into a false sense of security. I adjusted the heater, letting the warm air chase away the lingering chill, and pulled out of my driveway. As I navigated the winding roads, the gentle hum of the engine filled the air, accompanied by the soft crunch of tires on the dusting of snow. The world outside my windshield was a winter wonderland, trees laden with a delicate frosting of white. I couldn't help but admire the beauty, even as I reminded myself to stay focused on the potentially treacherous road conditions. Traffic was light and I found myself lost in thought, my mind wandering to the day ahead. I had an important meeting scheduled, and I mentally rehearsed my presentation. The normalcy of the moment was striking. How could I have known that in mere minutes my entire world would be turned upside down? I approached a bend in the road, slowing slightly as I always did. But this time something was different. As I turned the wheel, I felt a sudden loss of control. My heart leapt into my throat as I realized I had hit a patch of black ice. In that split second, time seemed to slow to a crawl. The car began to slide and panic surged through me. I desperately tried to regain control, but it was futile. The steering wheel spun uselessly in my hands as the vehicle careened towards the guardrail. I caught a glimpse of my wide-eyed reflection in the rearview mirror. Fear etched across my face. The impact came with a sickening crunch of metal. The sound of shattering glass filled my ears as the windshield spiderwebbed before me. My body was thrown forward, then sideways, as the car smashed through the guardrail and began to tumble down the ravine beyond. The world became a dizzying blur of white snow and dark trees. I was powerless, a passenger in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Each impact sent shockwaves of pain through my body. The airbag deployed with a deafening bang, momentarily disorienting me further. When the car finally came to rest, an eerie silence descended. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. Then, as if from a great distance, I became aware of a searing pain in my chest. I tried to take a breath, but it felt as though an immense weight was pressing down on me. Panic clawed at the edges of my consciousness as I realized the steering wheel had been crushed against my chest in the impact. Each attempt to draw air became a desperate struggle. My vision began to darken at the edges, closing in like a vignette. As the pain intensified, a strange calm began to wash over me. It was as if my mind was detaching from the horror of the situation, floating above it all. I thought of my family, of all the things left unsaid and undone. A tear slid down my cheek as I felt my grip on consciousness slipping away. In those final moments, as darkness encroached, I had the strangest sensation. It was as if I was being gently pulled upward, away from the broken shell of my body and the mangled wreckage of my car. The pain began to fade, replaced by a lightness I had never experienced before. I found myself looking down at the scene of the accident, a detached observer to my own tragedy. The sight of my crumpled form in the driver's seat should have been terrifying, but instead, I felt only peace. It was as if I had shed a heavy coat, leaving behind all the worries and pains of mortal existence. As I drifted further from the physical world, I became aware of a soft, warm light growing stronger around me. It beckoned to me, promising answers to questions I didn't even know I had. The world I had known all my life began to fade away, replaced by something altogether different and extraordinary. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. In the moments that followed, I would be granted visions that would forever change my understanding of prayer, faith, and the unseen battles raging around us every day. As I crossed the threshold between life and death, I was about to discover truths that would shake the very foundations of my beliefs. The light enveloped me, and I felt myself being drawn towards a presence both familiar and awe-inspiring. As the last vestiges of my earthly concerns fell away, I realized I was about to come face to face with Jesus himself. My near-death experience was about to become a divine revelation, one that would not only change my life, but had the power to transform the way we all think about the simple act of prayer. As the physical world faded away, I found myself suspended in a void of absolute stillness. The chaos of the accident, the searing pain in my chest, the panic that had gripped me moments ago, all of it melted away, replaced by a profound sense of peace. It was as if I had been submerged in a warm, comforting embrace, cradled in a realm beyond time and space. In this ethereal state, my senses seemed both heightened and muted. I couldn't feel my body, yet I was more aware than ever before. The silence was absolute, but it didn't feel oppressive. Instead, it was a living quiet, pregnant with possibility and wonder. I marveled at the absence of fear or worry. All the concerns that had weighed on me in life, bills to pay, deadlines to meet, relationships to navigate, seemed trivial and distant now. As I floated in this tranquil void, I became aware of a change. A pinprick of light appeared in the distance, barely perceptible at first. It grew steadily, expanding outward like the dawn breaking over the horizon. The light was unlike anything I had ever seen, pure, radiant, and alive. It pulsed with a warmth that seemed to reach into the very core of my being. The brilliance intensified, filling my field of vision. It should have been blinding, yet I found I could look directly into it without discomfort. As the light enveloped me, I felt a surge of emotions, joy, peace, and an overwhelming sense of love. Tears would have streamed down my face if I had still been in my physical body. Within the heart of this celestial radiance, a figure began to take shape. At first, it was just a silhouette, a darker outline against the brilliant backdrop. Gradually, features emerged, the curve of a shoulder, the outline of a face. The figure stepped forward, and I found myself face to face with a presence both commanding and gentle. My heart, or whatever passed for a heart in this spiritual realm, raced with a mixture of awe and reverence. There was something achingly familiar about this being, as if I had known him all my life, yet was truly seeing him for the first time. His eyes held a depth of wisdom and compassion that took my breath away. A smile played at the corners of his mouth, radiating warmth and welcome. As I gazed upon him, a cascade of emotions washed over me. There was joy so intense it bordered on ecstasy, a sense of homecoming, and an indescribable feeling of being truly known and accepted. Yet mingled with these positive emotions was a twinge of something else, a realization of my own shortcomings in the face of such perfection, a bittersweet understanding of all the times I had fallen short in my earthly life. The figure before me exuded an aura of authority, but it wasn't intimidating. Instead, it felt like the natural order of things, as if the universe itself recognized his sovereignty. Despite never having seen him in this form before, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt who stood before me. When he spoke, his voice resonated through my entire being. It was like listening to a symphony and a whisper at the same time, filling me with a sense of peace and purpose. "Amelia," he said, my name sounding like a beloved melody on his lips. "I am Jesus." Those three simple words shook me to my core. Here was the one I had prayed to, sung about, and tried to follow throughout my life. Yet all my imaginings paled in comparison to the reality of his presence. I wanted to fall to my knees in worship, to pour out my heart in gratitude and repentance, but in this spiritual state, I could only bask in his radiance. Jesus' eyes met mine, and in that gaze I saw infinite love, but also a hint of sorrow. It was as if he could see every moment of my life, every triumph and failure, every joy and heartbreak, and he loved me through it all. "There is something you must see," he said, his voice gentle but filled with purpose. He extended his hand towards me, an invitation and a promise. I hesitated for a moment, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. Was I ready for whatever he wanted to show me? But as I looked into his eyes, I knew that with him by my side, I could face anything. As I reached out to take his hand, the realm around us began to shift. The brilliant light swirled and coalesced, forming shapes and shadows. I had the sensation of being swept along on a cosmic tide, moving through time and space. The peace I had felt in the void was replaced by a sense of anticipation and wonder. Jesus' grip on my hand was firm and reassuring as we traveled through this kaleidoscope of light and energy. I could feel the weight of the moment, knowing that whatever he was about to reveal would change me forever. As the swirling lights began to settle into more recognizable forms, I steeled myself for what was to come. The scene before us started to take shape, like a painting coming into focus. I saw the outlines of a modest living room, bathed in the soft glow of a lamp. As the details sharpened, I could make out a woman kneeling beside a small bed, her head bowed in prayer. The tenderness of the moment was palpable, and I felt a lump form in my throat. Jesus turned to me, his eyes shining with a mix of compassion and determination. "Watch closely, Amelia," he said, his voice carrying the weight of ages. "For in this simple act of faith, you will see the true power of prayer unleashed." As we stood on the threshold of this vision, I felt a tremor of excitement and trepidation run through me. I knew I was about to witness something profound, something that would forever change my understanding of the spiritual realm. With Jesus by my side, I prepared to step into the first of many revelations that would unfold during my brief journey beyond the veil of mortality. As the vision appeared, I found myself in a modest living room lit by a soft table lamp. The warm glow cast shadows across worn furniture and faded wallpaper, creating a cozy atmosphere despite the humble surroundings. I saw a woman kneeling by a child's bed, praying intensely. Her long dark hair hid her face, but I could hear her whispered words. The boy, about 5 or 6, slept peacefully, unaware of what was about to happen. Suddenly, I felt uneasy. The room's shadows grew darker, and a chill ran down my spine. Jesus stood beside me, comforting me as the darkness gathered. From these shadows, dark figures emerged. At first, they were just wisps of smoke, but as they got closer to the bed, they became twisted, evil shapes. I realized with horror that these were demons trying to harm the child. The mother's prayers became more urgent, and something amazing started to happen. Tiny lights began to shine from her lips as she spoke. These lights grew stronger, forming beams that cut through the darkness. The demons recoiled as if they were being burned. I watched in awe as this spiritual battle unfolded. The mother kept praying, unaware of what her words were doing. The light pushed back the darkness until the demons were forced into the corners of the room. Finally, with an angry howl, the demons vanished. The room felt clean and peaceful. The mother kissed her son's forehead and quietly left. As the scene faded, I turned to Jesus, amazed by what I'd seen. He explained, "This shows the true power of prayer, Amelia. This mother's faith protected her child from evil." "How can words do that?" I asked, still stunned. Jesus smiled warmly. "Prayer isn't just words. It's a direct line to heaven. This mother's love and faith allowed my protection to flow through her prayers." I felt overwhelmed by what this meant. How often had I prayed without realizing how powerful it could be? Jesus put his hand on my shoulder. "That's why I showed you this. Prayer is a powerful tool against evil, protecting those who need it most." "What about people who don't know how to pray or don't believe in it?" I asked. "That's why it's important for those who understand to pray for others," Jesus said kindly. "Every prayer matters, even the smallest ones." As the vision ended, I felt changed by this new understanding. Prayer wasn't just about comfort or saying thanks. It was a powerful link between heaven and earth that could change things in ways I never imagined. I knew this was just the start of what Jesus wanted to show me. I braced myself for the next vision, knowing each one would change how I saw the world and my place in it. The modest church stood quietly on a tree-lined street. Inside, about 24 people gathered for their weekly prayer meeting. Pastor James, a kind older man with silver hair, called the group to order. "Let's join our hearts and minds in prayer," he said warmly. As they bowed their heads, Jesus guided me closer. We watched unseen as the air in the church seemed to thicken with energy. People started praying out loud, a mom for her sick kid, an old man dealing with pain, a teen being bullied at school. Their voices rose and fell together. Suddenly, the air above the church started shimmering. Angels appeared, carrying strange tools like star-woven bandages and compasses that pointed beyond our world. "Look," Jesus whispered, "this is heaven's answer to their prayers." The angels spread out, some staying in the church, while others went into the town. They seemed to know exactly what to do for each prayer. Jesus explained, "When people pray together like this, it's extra powerful. It cuts right through to heaven." As the meeting ended, the whole place felt different, lighter, more hopeful. The worried faces I'd seen earlier now looked peaceful. Pastor James said a final thank you prayer. As everyone started to leave, I turned to Jesus with so many questions. "What you saw," he said, "shows how group prayer affects the spirit world. When my followers unite in faith, they can change hearts and bring my kingdom to earth." The vision faded, leaving me in awe. Prayer, especially when people did it together, was way more powerful than I'd thought. It was a direct line to heaven that could change both the seen and unseen worlds. I knew this was just the start. As Jesus got ready to show me more, I braced myself, excited to learn about the hidden stuff happening around us every day. As the congregation prayed, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The warm glow in the church wavered, and Jesus put his hand on my shoulder. "Watch closely, Amelia," he said quietly. "Where faith is strong, darkness often shows up to challenge it." Suddenly, I saw demons appearing around the church. They were the opposite of the bright angels we'd seen before, twisted, evil-looking things with glowing yellow eyes. They started circling the church, clearly wanting to cause trouble. But when the first demon tried to enter, something amazing happened. The prayers got louder, like the people could sense the danger. The demons stumbled back, covering their ears like they were in pain. One big demon lunged at a woman praying in the front. As it reached for her, a burst of light from her hands knocked it backwards. Inside, people kept praying peacefully. Outside, the demons were losing the fight. Jesus explained, "This is how prayer works in spiritual battles, Amelia. When my people pray with faith, it becomes a weapon against evil." As the church started praying for others, beams of light shot out in all directions, scattering the remaining demons. When the vision faded, I asked Jesus if prayer always had such a big effect. He smiled and said, "The battle between good and evil is always happening. Not every prayer leads to a big victory, but they all matter. What you saw shows how powerful it can be when people pray together with faith." He got serious and added, "But the enemy doesn't give up easily. He'll keep trying new tricks. That's why I tell my followers to stay alert and keep praying." As everything disappeared, I felt amazed and responsible. I realized prayer wasn't just about feeling good. It was a powerful tool in a real spiritual war. It could change things in ways we can't even imagine. I knew I'd never think about prayer the same way again. Every prayer, no matter how small, could make a big difference in the spiritual world. The dimly lit room was barely larger than a closet, with peeling wallpaper and old family photos on the walls. In the corner, John, a man in his 60s with graying hair and a weathered face, knelt by a worn armchair, praying. His prayer was simple and hesitant. "Lord," he whispered, "I'm worried about my grandson Tommy. He's having trouble in school and hanging out with the wrong crowd. Please help guide him back on track." As John prayed, a tiny spark of light appeared, growing into a small, glowing orb. Suddenly, it burst outward, sending waves of energy through the room and beyond. These waves touched people's lives in unexpected ways. A young mother named Sarah felt a moment of peace. Tommy found himself interested in his history lesson for the first time in months. A pastor got a burst of inspiration for his sermon. Even at the city council, a debate about after-school programs took a surprising turn. Jesus turned to me and smiled. See, Amelia? This is what even a small prayer can do. I was amazed. How can one prayer have such a big impact? I asked. Every prayer is like a pebble dropped in water, Jesus explained. The ripples might start small, but they can reach far beyond what we can see. He pointed to John, who was getting up, unaware of what his prayer had done. He might never know how much his words have changed things. As I thought about what I'd seen, I felt both excited and humbled. It made me think about all the quick prayers I'd said without realizing how powerful they could be. Jesus, knowing what I was thinking, said, "This is why I tell my followers to pray all the time about everything. In the spiritual world, every prayer matters. Each one can start changes that affect lives, communities, and even whole countries." I felt a new sense of purpose. I realized prayer wasn't just something you do out of habit or duty. It was a real way to change the world, connecting directly to God and bringing hope to dark places. This was just the start of what Jesus would show me. As we went deeper into the spiritual world, I'd learn even more about prayer that would change how I saw my faith and my place in the world. As Jesus guided me through the spiritual revelations, I felt a sudden shift in my perception. It was like a thin veil was being lifted from my eyes. The world around me transformed, revealing a landscape both familiar and strange. The physical world shimmered with energy I'd never noticed before. The air seemed alive, filled with currents of light and shadow. Angels and demons moved through walls and crowds, their forms ghostly but clear. People, unaware of the spiritual beings around them, went about their day, unknowingly walking through a cosmic battlefield. Streams of light, which I realized were prayers, crisscrossed the landscape like glowing rivers. Some were faint, barely visible. Others were powerful beams cutting through the air, pushing back darkness and catching angels' attention. An old woman's quiet prayer for her grandson became a thread of light wrapping around the young man, shielding him from a nearby demon. A child's thanks for her meal burst into joyful energy, making angels smile and work harder to protect her family's home. In a busy square, I saw a businessman struggling with a choice. An angel and demon stood on either side, whispering to him. His own prayers, a flickering light, seemed to make the angel's voice stronger and the demon's weaker. In a hospital, a family gathered around a sick child. Their prayers created a dome of light over the bed, where angels tended to the child with tools made of pure energy. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder, sensing how overwhelmed I felt. "This is what reality truly looks like," he said gently but powerfully. "It's the constant dance between the physical and spiritual worlds, shaping people's lives and history itself." He pointed to a bright beam of light coming from a small church. "Prayer connects these two worlds," Jesus explained. "It's how my children influence the spiritual realm, bringing divine help and fighting darkness." I watched as each prayer, even small ones, rippled through the spiritual air. Some prayers sparked angel activity, while others strengthened people facing temptation or hardship. Even the simplest act of faith could change the spiritual landscape, bringing light to dark areas. "Why can't people see this?" I asked, amazed by what I was seeing. Jesus smiled with a touch of sadness. "Faith doesn't come from seeing, Amelia. If my children could see the whole spiritual realm, they wouldn't need to trust or grow their faith. The biggest wins happen in what's unseen, in quiet moments of surrender and belief." As the vision faded, I felt humble yet empowered. I knew I had to share what I'd seen with others who didn't know about this hidden drama around them. Jesus, reading my thoughts, said, "Remember, understanding brings responsibility. What you've seen should inspire, not overwhelm. Let it strengthen your faith and make you passionate about prayer so you can guide others." As we got ready for the next revelation, I knew my view on life, faith, and prayer had changed forever. I'd glimpsed the true nature of reality, if only for a moment. It was a precious gift and a truth I'd spend my life sharing with others. A gentle tug pulled me back from the awe-inspiring visions I'd been immersed in. The light around me pulsed, each beat in sync with the urgent pull. My head spun as I felt caught between two worlds. Then Jesus turned to me with a bittersweet smile. "Amelia," he said, his voice full of love yet tinged with solemnity, "it's time for you to go back." I froze, reluctance washing over me like a wave. How could I leave this place? Here I had learned so much about prayer and the spiritual world. The thought of returning to normal life felt like a loss I wasn't ready to face. "Do I have to?" I asked, my voice trembling. "There's still so much I don't understand." Jesus rested a hand on my shoulder, the warmth of his touch both comforting and grounding. "You've seen more than most people ever will, Amelia, but your journey in the physical world isn't over yet. You have something important to do, a message to share." My heart raced as his words sank in. The knowledge I now carried felt like a weight pressing down on me. How could I possibly explain all I had seen to people who'd never experienced anything like it? He seemed to sense my unease. His voice remained steady and kind. "Remember, Amelia, understanding comes with responsibility. What you've witnessed isn't meant to overwhelm you, but to inspire you. Let it deepen your faith and ignite your passion for prayer. That passion will guide others." His gaze held mine, filled with wisdom and care. The world needs to understand the power of prayer and the spiritual battles happening around them. You've been chosen to share these truths. I swallowed hard and nodded, determination flickering through my fear. Yet the enormity of the task ahead was undeniable. As I braced myself to return, Jesus spoke one last time. "Share what you've learned, but do so wisely and kindly. Not everyone will be ready to hear everything. Trust the Holy Spirit to guide you on when and how to speak. And remember, no matter how tough it gets, you're never alone. The connection you felt here is a lifeline, bridging heaven and earth." With those words, the radiant light began to fade. I felt myself falling, tumbling through layers of reality. My accident replayed in my mind, the icy road, losing control, the crash. Pain replaced the peace I'd felt, sharp and inescapable. As the last glimmers of heavenly light vanished, new sounds reached me. A beeping monitor, quiet voices, the rustling of sheets. I fought to open my eyes, every movement a struggle. "She's awake!" I heard my mom's voice, thick with emotion, as she grabbed my hand. "Thank God!" The doctor hurried over, speaking words I could barely process. My head swirled, trying to reconcile the hospital room with the spiritual journey I just experienced. When the chaos settled, I lay there staring at the ceiling, emotions swirling like a storm inside me. What I'd learned was both incredible and overwhelming. How would I ever explain it? Would anyone believe me? Surrounded by machines and the anxious faces of my family, I made a silent promise. I would honor this gift. Somehow, I would find a way to share the truth about the power of prayer and the spiritual world. The world needed hope, and I could offer it. I closed my eyes and whispered a silent thank you. Even though I was back in the physical world, I knew the connection between heaven and earth remained unbroken. And I, Amelia Carter, had been chosen to share that extraordinary truth with others. The steady beep of the heart monitor filled my hospital room, a jarring contrast to the heavenly symphony I had just experienced. I lay in the narrow bed, the scratchy sheets a far cry from the warm embrace of divine light that had surrounded me moments ago. The harsh fluorescent lights made my eyes ache for the gentle glow of heaven. My mind raced as I tried to process the profound journey I'd just been on. The weight of the knowledge I now carried was both exhilarating and terrifying. How could I possibly explain what I'd seen to the doctors and nurses bustling around me, their focus entirely on my physical condition? A young resident approached my bedside with a clipboard. His kind expression gave me hope that he might understand. "Miss Carter, can you tell me what you remember about the accident?" he asked gently. My heart pounded as I searched for the right words. "I saw things," I began, my voice trembling. "Jesus showed me the power of prayer. I saw angels and demons fighting all around us. Every word we say to God affects the spiritual world." His eyebrows rose slightly, and he exchanged a glance with the nurse beside him. That's been pretty interesting, Ms. Carter, he said cautiously. It's not uncommon for patients who've experienced trauma to have vivid dreams or hallucinations. Don't worry, it's normal during recovery. Frustration burned in my chest. This wasn't a dream or a hallucination. What I'd seen felt more real than the hospital room I was lying in. I could still sense Jesus' presence, still see the bright streams of prayer cutting through the darkness. As the staff examined me, I realized that sharing my experience wasn't going to be simple. The skepticism I faced now was likely just the beginning, but I couldn't stay quiet about what I'd witnessed. My life had been irrevocably changed, and there was no going back to the way things were before, not now that I knew about the spiritual battles happening all around us. I started forming a plan. I'd begin by talking to my family and close friends, the people who would trust me. From there, I could slowly reach out to others who might be open to hearing my story. I imagined hosting small prayer groups, writing about my journey, and maybe even speaking at churches someday. For the first time since waking up, I felt a spark of excitement. I knew it wouldn't be easy. Some people would think I was crazy or attention-seeking, but I couldn't forget what Jesus had shown me, like the mom's prayer that protected her child, or how one simple prayer could ripple out and touch countless lives. Those images gave me the courage to move forward. Taking a deep breath, I silently promised myself and God that I'd spend the rest of my life sharing the truth about prayer. I wanted people to understand how deeply the physical and the spiritual worlds were connected. It was the only way I could truly honor the incredible gift I'd been given. As I drifted to sleep, my mind was already buzzing with ideas. I'd start by keeping a journal, writing down everything I could remember from my experience. I'd look for others who might have had similar journeys, and I'd talk to my pastor about the best way to share my story with the church. That night, I dreamed of light breaking through darkness, of prayers rising to heaven, and of lives transformed by faith. The road ahead would be tough, I knew, but I was ready to take on my mission, one prayer at a time. As I reflect on my journey beyond the veil, the power of prayer hits me hard. I saw prayers become beams of light, cutting through darkness and scaring off evil forces. It changed how I see our connection to God forever. If you're listening to my story, I want you to think about prayer differently. Your prayers are real weapons in a battle we can't see. They can change things and bring light to dark places. Think about it. What might your prayers be doing in the spirit world right now? Here's what I want you to do. Make time to pray today, even if it's just 5 minutes. Find a quiet spot, close your eyes, and speak from your heart. Picture your prayers as beams of light, touching lives and pushing back darkness. Remember, God hears every prayer, and even small acts of faith matter. When you start praying more, know you're part of something bigger than yourself. Your words can bring hope, healing, and change to a world that really needs it. Let that idea fill you with wonder and drive. The spirit world is waiting for you to speak up. Are you ready to do it?